Okay, y'all, in this short lesson, we are going to learn how to write a counterargument, and we're going to plug that counterargument in right at the beginning of our concluding paragraph. So by the end of this lesson, you will have also finished writing your concluding paragraph. When we write counterargument, we are strengthening our own argument by acknowledging what someone who doesn't totally agree with us might believe. So how do we do that? There are 2 steps to writing counterargument. Step number 1 is acknowledging the opposing argument. I want you to ask yourself, what is my audience thinking that might influence if they believe my argument? Step number 2, we're going to explain why it isn't a credible argument or why our argument is stronger. So let's look at a silly example. Here is Watson, my Labradoodle, and Elizabeth, my baby, and Elizabeth has a tray full of strawberries. So these 2 can't talk, but let's imagine that they're having a conversation and Watson is trying to convince Elizabeth to allow him to eat all of her strawberries. So here's Watson. You should let me eat the rest of those strawberries. Here's Elizabeth. I'm just learning to eat by myself, and I really like strawberries. I want to eat them. So now here's Watson's brilliant counterargument. Notice that he's going to start by acknowledging the opposing argument. Girl, I know that you're digging this eating thing. Notice that he doesn't bash on what she thinks or believes. He just acknowledges her argument. Now, he's going to explain why her argument isn't credible or why his argument is stronger. However, you know it is going to take you forever to just get one of those strawberries in your mouth, and you are a messy eater. I can clean up that tray in no time, and you think it's so silly to watch me jump up on your high chair. So Watson was able to convince Elizabeth to allow him to eat all of her strawberries. Let's look now at an example in the piece that we're currently writing. So remember that I am writing about how climate change is heating up the waters around the Pacific Northwest, which is really impacting salmon populations. So in my conclusion, I wanted to write about the solution of all of us chipping in and reducing our carbon emissions or our carbon footprint, which really would affect global warming or at least slow global warming down. So when I was thinking about the solution, I was asking myself, what might you as the reader, what might you think or believe that's going to impact whether you believe my argument or not? So I was thinking that some of you might think that the little things that you do, those little choices that you make on a day-to-day basis, really aren't big enough to have an impact on climate change, that you can't do anything to really slow down global warming yourself. So I thought that I would use that as my counterargument. Many people think that there is little we can do to stop our climate from getting warmer. Believing that our small choices can impact climate change feels as silly at times as buying a bathing suit for a Seattle summer. So notice that I'm starting by acknowledging the opposing argument. I am not bashing on people that think that they can't really make a huge difference. I'm just acknowledging their argument. Now I'm going to explain why it isn't credible or why my argument is stronger. However, we don't have another option. Unless we globally can significantly reduce our carbon emissions, the climate will continue to warm, as will the waters around the Pacific Northwest. Our salmon will not survive if our waters get much warmer. No law or policy will have the kind of impact on reducing emissions that we need to save salmon populations and protect Native people's way of life. It is up to you and me. So I've explained why that argument isn't credible or why my argument is stronger. So this is the beginning of my concluding paragraph. Now I'm going to finish up my concluding paragraph. So this is just the start. Here is the second half of my concluding paragraph. In order to keep our waters at a safe temperature for salmon, each of us needs to limit our carbon footprint by making small choices, like taking public transportation, buying energy-efficient appliances, or composting. For example, that Nordstrom bathing suit that's still sitting in my closet used a ton of energy to produce. I could have saved a salmon by being honest with myself about the fact that I live in Seattle. It is critical that we all do our part to address our ever-warming climate and protect our salmon. So in your conclusion, I want you to do 4 things. You're obviously going to start with your counterargument. Then I want you to remind the reader about your central argument. That doesn't need to be second, but somewhere in your conclusion, you need to remind the reader about your central argument. I want you to discuss at least one possible solution, and I want you to create that feeling of closure for the reader. The reader, after reading your conclusion, should really feel like your piece is finished, and they should fully believe your argument. So I'm going to have you at this point get started. Start with your counterargument and then finish up writing your concluding paragraph. Get started.